Welcome back to A Minute with Alan. This one's called Beauregard. I'm sitting in my retreat center, and it's the Koufax Memorial Retreat Center. You see his picture up there behind me and some of the awards I've won under that. And Koufax was our first white German Shepherd. And then we had Bentley, and now we have Royce. And you can see Royce, I think, over here. He's over here with Coco, keeping me company in here. And this is about a 20 by 20, a 400 square foot space. And my easels are here where I do my Zoom sessions, and then over in the corner are some couches and chairs where I do my counseling sessions. I had this built, this created, about 2 or 3 years before the pandemic, because I didn't want to go to local hotels for people who came to see me. I wanted to do something right here. And then, of course, when the pandemic hit a couple of years later, this was wonderful because all of my remote work could be done here in terms of workshops. But this wasn't always an empty space or a retreat center. This was the indoor pool. And an indoor pool is called a natatorium, technically. 10,000 gallons. Now, out here we have a 75,000-gallon outdoor pool. So we would use this in the winter. But once the kids left for school, we questioned why we needed this anymore. We wouldn't use it all that often. And there was mold problems, and there were humidity problems and temperature problems. It's not easy to maintain an indoor pool. And so I thought about turning it into this retreat center. We got a designer. The problem was the indoor pool had an occupant, and the occupant was Beauregard the snake. Beauregard was a 7.5-foot red constrictor. If you're wondering, it's like a python. And Beauregard was my son's snake, and he decided when he would go to the University of Miami as a freshman, he would take the snake with him. American Airlines did not agree, nor did the University of Miami. So my son left with my tuition check and with his books, but not with Beauregard. Now, Beauregard, and all snakes, can swim, and they swim like this. In sort of a curled position. It's frightening. And every once in a while, I'd find him on the bottom of the pool. I thought at first he drowned. No, he's all lung. And he would sit down there for a long, long time. And then he'd surface, and he'd slither up on top of a painting and manage to get himself coiled back and forth in painting. So when I walked in, he was eye level with me, flicking his tongue. People said that the chlorine would kill Beauregard, but no one told Beauregard, and he thrived. The problem here became that my wife really loved Beauregard. And all of my entreaties went nowhere with her to give him away to someplace responsible and to turn this into something other than an indoor pool. But here was her devotion. Beauregard ate rats. Now, we don't have endemic indigenous rats in this place, and so we had to get frozen rats. At the time, I had a gorgeous Aston Martin, and we'd take this Aston Martin out to the boonies in Rhode Island, where there's a guy who made a living in this house selling what? Frozen rats. And my wife would buy the frozen rats, store them here. The next problem was that snakes, and particularly Beauregard, would not eat anything dead. And so he had to eat something that was moving. So my wife would pick up a frozen rat by the tail, I am not making this up, and dangle it like this, move it like this, and Beauregard would come up and take it out of her hand. And over the next month, you'd see this lump in Beauregard slowly move down his body, diminishing in size, until after about 30 days, he excreted what even he could not digest. There'd be a little fur, some bones. I kid you not. He would shed his skin periodically, and we'd find this big snake skin that we had to dispose of because you couldn't make shoes from it. One day, our cleaning crew came, who happened to be Guatemalan. And my wife opened the door with Beauregard wrapped around her shoulders. God knows where she was moving him. And the cleaning crew took one look at her and crossed themselves. And if my wife thereafter, who they considered now a high priestess of something, asked them to do the ceiling with toothbrushes, they would have done it, scared out of their minds. So one Christmas, when the family was here, my brother-in-law said, let me have the snake. And Beauregard promptly wrapped himself around my brother-in-law's neck. Now, my brother-in-law, was a cop for 30 years or 40 years. He said, I can handle snakes. Well, Beauregard started to constrict. And my brother-in-law's head turned red and began to bulge. My son said, maybe we should do something. I said, well, let's just wait and see what happens. Finally, when we were told that Beauregard had to go to rabbits and eventually goats, I convinced my wife that if we kept him, the chances were that he could wrap himself around her and bring her down to the bottom of this pool. Even though it was only 4 or 5 feet deep, he could keep her down there, you know, thinking it was affection. And so reluctantly, she agreed that we would give him to an animal recovery operation, which we did. And they had, I don't know what, alligators and other snakes and turtles and things. And apparently, you know, he's living a long and happy life, or has since deceased at the end of his due age. And I don't know if he ever graduated to horses. But I'll tell you something. Every time I'm doing something, presenting in this room and looking at the camera, I can't help looking at the floor and imagine Beauregard swimming underneath me.